outside who can hear me, we're about to go. So first of all, I'd like to thank Huttner for that coffee break. Always nice to have Huttner with us. And one thing while I do remember, NIIT have got a drawer. If you put your card, your business card in the bowl, or I'm not sure what it is, every day, at the end of the day, they're going to have a draw for a Kindle. A Kindle. So if you want to win a Kindle, put your card in NIIT's receptacle or bowl or whatever it might be. And good luck. Now, our next session is looking at the other side of the industry, the airports, tourism, travel side of things. And to lead it off, we've got a short presentation by our senior analyst, who's going to talk about the aviation side of things. So Brendon, maybe if you'd like to come up and join us. And he'll be followed by Siew, who's going to moderate, Yeoh, who's going to moderate the next panel. She'll come straight up after Brendon has. So ladies and gentlemen, if you welcome Brendon. And,
thanks, Peter. We're just going to do a brief overview here to set the scene on what LCCs are doing already and will be doing in Asia in terms of stimulating growth in aviation and tourism. I'm going to look at more on the aviation side, Hoon will look at more on the tourism side, and then the panelists will come up and take all your questions. We're going to look at, just very briefly, I'm going to go over what's driving some of the growth here, and then look at some case studies that show the stimulation in the last 10 years or so as the LCC movement hit Asia, mainly Southeast Asia, as we know. And not surprisingly, most of the case studies or examples so far are in Southeast Asia and in Australia. And Northeast Asia is next, including Japan and some of the other North Asian countries. Peter had touched on this earlier, what's driving the growth in the LCCs in Asia, and what we've seen so far in Southeast Asia is rapid growth since the LCC revolution began here, roughly in about 2001 with the launch of AirAsia. Jetstar was about the same time, and a couple of years later we had Tiger and a few other LCCs. Intra-Asia trade is booming. There's a lot of more travel, business travel entrepreneurs who actually take LCCs rather than full-service carriers. Previously, a lot of the trade in Asia was with countries outside the region, but we've seen a lot of growth in trade within Southeast Asia and within Asia. And a lot of this business growth is actually going on LCCs because it's local businesses. Economic thresholds, that's really the big one. It's just stimulating lots of growth in the LCC sector and in tourism as well. In a market like Singapore, we've seen huge growth in the last few years with markets like Indonesia, where we're just seeing a lot more people being able to afford to fly and take quick trips. And generally, the easiest trips for these people are short-haul trips, which is the playground for the LCCs, for visa issues, and also because these people are just able to afford flying for the first time. Most of these people are not taking long-haul trips just yet. Liberalization, of course, we've seen it in a lot of Southeast Asian markets already, and we continue to see it in Southeast Asia and now in North Asia as well, driving the growth, and of course the lower price of travel. So we have two things happening at once. We have the demand, and we have people with higher discretionary incomes, but we also have airfares going down, and the combination of those two factors obviously drive huge growth at the low end of the market. Peter also briefly went over this growth here just to see what LCCs have done so far in this decade of LCCs in Asia, up to 19% last year. But that, again, as Peter was pointing out, 1 in 5 is still below the global average. But there's really two sides of the coin. to this particular chart. One's within Southeast Asia, and one's within North Asia. Within Southeast Asia, we have an LCC penetration rate now of about 50%. Southeast Asia as well is about 50%, but of course North Asia is less than 10%. So what we've seen is the stimulation in Southeast Asia in these last several years. And we're going to get into that and see where the growth has been. And then of course North Asia is kind of this coming decade, starting really now, where we see the growth happening. The first case study looks at Malaysia and the growth in Malaysia since AirAsia launched. AirAsia launched in 2001, and as you can see, basically, excluding AirAsia, the traffic in KL has been flat, and you can see that just from the traffic of the two terminals. Main terminal traffic has been relatively flat, and the LCC terminal, which is primarily AirAsia, but also a few other low-cost carriers operate there as well, has basically accounted for all the growth since the LCC opened. And as everybody who's flown through KL recently knows, or the low-cost terminal, that terminal is bursting, and it seems it has been for some time. There's going to be a new terminal opening there next year. And meanwhile, the main terminal is pretty sleepy, as anybody who's flown to the KL main terminal now. All the growth has been in the LCC sector, and it's new growth too. So right now in Malaysia we have 50% LCC penetration rate, down from basically 10 years ago. But they haven't necessarily stolen the market, even though obviously market share from 0 to 50% would indicate that they've taken market share away from full service carriers. The reality is that the market has almost doubled in size, so it is stimulation. It is and it is driving tourism in Malaysia, as the Malaysian tourism authorities can attest to. And Malaysia was the first country that's really saw that, and then AirAsia has taken that to other Southeast Asian countries since then. Singapore, same kind of situation we've seen since. Singapore was a little bit later because the low-cost carrier trend there began at the end of 2004, after Tiger was launched, after Jetstar Asia was launched, and AirAsia also expanded using their existing AOCs in other countries very rapidly in the last 5 years into Singapore. And what has happened there is that the market, almost all of Singapore's growth, just like we saw in KL, has been with the LCCs. LCCs last year carried about 12 million passengers in Singapore, which is about just over 25% of the total. But in 2004, that number was virtually 0. So in that time frame, we've seen the LCCs have captured about 80% of the growth at Changi, that 12 million passengers that they didn't carry before. And again, it's stimulation primarily. I mean, of course, you can say they've taken some market share away, but SIA's traffic, has been flat primarily because of LCCs. But I mean, they haven't lost traffic. And it's also you also factor in your Silk Air, which has actually accounted for most of the other 20%. Singapore Airlines as a group hasn't actually decreased. Its SIA mainline has, but Silk Air, which has been used increasingly in the short-haul markets because their narrow-body aircraft are better placed to compete with the LCCs, have accounted for most of the 20% that LCCs haven't accounted for. And the result is obviously stimulation. I was also mentioning the Indonesian market in particular has really picked up. A huge number of Indonesians going to Singapore to shop and tourism, and you also have a huge increase in the amount of travel from the Philippines, as well as Singaporeans, of course, making more short trips. Incomes were already pretty high in Singapore, so the lower fares have stimulated more frequent trips. And the last example is Gold Coast, which is also, we've seen basically flat traffic for years and years and years with the duopoly of Ansett and Qantas, and then when the low costs started there with Jetstar, and then later Tiger Australia, this airport has just, expanded exponentially. And it's of course a leisure destination, and it's an airport that's mostly now served by low-cost carriers. And in the last couple of years, we've seen more international growth there too. AirAsia X and and also more recently Scoot this year made it its second destination after Sydney. And Jetstar also has been expanding their international operations from Gold Coast to Japan. And this is, again, all stimulation. This is a market that really, wasn't growing at all, and we've seen growth completely driven by the LCCs. We're not really seeing too much traffic necessarily being stolen by LCCs, but we're seeing a driving force here that is impacting tourism in the Gold Coast, which is booming, of course, thanks to these capacity increases. What's next? Just Japan is the market that I've chosen to look into here. Japan, it's still under 10%, the LCC penetration rate. But the domestic market, by the end of this year, should be close to 20% because 3 LCCs have launched this year. This 9%, this 8-9% figure for international and domestic are from 2011. We've had 3 LCCs, of course, launch in Japan this year. They've accounted for the bulk of the LCC activity in Asia. There's been 7 LCCs launched this year in Asia, but one of them was a relaunch of Mandala, and one of them is a hybrid carrier, Thai Smile. So most of the LCCs that launched this year are Japan. And obviously that's created a capacity increase initially domestically, but we'll also start to see it internationally. And this just shows you the opportunities for LCCs in Japan, looking at some of these yields on some of these routes compared to what a traditional seat cost would be for an LCC in Japan, LCC in Asia or Japan. Of course, an LCC in Japan will have higher unit costs than an LCC in other countries. However, there's such a room in that, such a huge space in that market for an LCC to come in and stimulate demand, even with a relatively high cost for an LCC, because the cost and the yields are so high in the domestic market in Japan and some of the international markets as well. So, Japan we're going to see what happened in KL, in Singapore, and in Gold Coast, in Japan, starting this year and over the next few years. So hopefully when we have this conference in 8 years or so, we'll be able to use Japan as an example, just like we have had in KL, Singapore, and other markets in Southeast Asia as well that we didn't have time to get into. So that just shows you what the potential is in North Asia for LCCs driving aviation growth and driving tourism. And it uses some of the examples in Southeast Asia, where there still will be growth, but those markets are more mature at this point because of discretionary incomes are increasing, because the economies are growing. There'll still be some growth, but not the kind of growth that we'll see in North Asia because we haven't had the LCC boom start until just now. And I'm going to invite up Siew. She's going to look at some of the aspects on the tourism side, and then we're going to get into the panel discussion.
Thanks, Brendon. Thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. It is afternoon already. The morning just flew by. So let me begin by asking the audience in the room first, okay? How many people of you have flown with an LCC? Put up your hand. Okay, quite a lot. How many of you have flown with an LCC for business? Right. How many of you have flown for leisure? Okay, I expect to see more hands now. All right. How many of you love LCCs and would like to see more LCCs? This is a very mixed crowd. I would have expected an overwhelming applause for LCCs, given what Peter has said as to how it's going to transform our travel industry. So, I want to begin this session by saying these lines, okay? Nobody, however, who has paid any attention to the peculiar features of our present era will doubt for a moment that we're living at a period of most wonderful transition. So these words were uttered by Prince Albert, the husband of Queen Victoria, in the early spring of 1850, when England stood on the brink of an industrial revolution. I wish I had written that, but I think those words are equally apt today, because I believe that Asia's travel and tourism also stands at a period of most wonderful transition. And I think it is up to us as to whether we capitalize on this opportunity or we squander it. So a few factors, I believe, why we are at this most wonderful transition. One, I think it's the urban intensity of life in Asia. Among the 25 most dense global cities, 17 are in Asia. And by 2025, 21 of the world's megacities, and that's places with more than 10 million people, will be in Asia. So we all need LCCs to escape, to stay sane, number one. So, as I said, thank goodness for LCCs that are making it possible for everyone to fly. Over the annual holidays fair in Singapore, which was just last weekend, Singaporeans spent a record $108 million buying tour packages, 8% more than the one last year. And the top 5 popular destinations were Europe, China, Korea, Taiwan, and Japan. Thirdly, it is the insane pace with which we in Asia are taking to the web and embracing social media and mobile. Yesterday I read that mobile web usage has overtaken fixed line internet in India. 1 in 2 searches in Japan are mobile, and you will hear more about mobile from one of the panelists. And in India again, 1 in 4 minutes spent online is spent on social networks. So insane social and mobile adoption in Asia. Number 4, rapid development by global brands, hotel brands into Asia. By 2017, Starwood will have more hotels in Asia than in the US, and it is opening a hotel every 10 days in our region. So they have to fill the rooms somehow. All these factors, I believe, converge to create a massive change for airports and tourism. And this is why we're having this panel discussion. And we've gathered together experts in this field. Please welcome to the stage my panelists, António Rato, CAM Macau International Airport Chairman Senior Assistant. António. Kei Shibata, CEO for Venture Republic Japan. Okay. Zaman Ahmad, Regional Head for AirAsia. Zaman. Brendon Elliot, VP Sales and Marketing, Venetian, Macau. This lovely resort that we're staying in. I have to say that, you know, when I checked into the hotel last night, I was saying, what an irony. Why is a low-cost airline conference being held at such a resort? And then Peter told me it's a gamble, you know, airline, so I believe him. So this is a good excuse. Last but not least, we have David Huttner from former Virgin Express and Virgin Group. Please welcome David. So gentlemen, good afternoon. Good afternoon. Exciting times, right? We've heard this morning. So I'm going to begin with the easy question, right? Brendon said that in Malaysia we now have 50% LCC penetration. In Singapore Changi, budget airlines now account for 26% of traffic at Changi. So can I ask you to predict LCC penetration in Japan in 5 years' time? What kind of penetration do you see across Asia with AirAsia flying here and in Macau? Any of you want to predict? Okay, yeah.
I think if you look globally, you can easily hit certainly over 30 up to 40%. If you look at a typical average in markets that are unconstrained. Some markets like the Philippines have well over 50, 60%. They have a weak national carrier. But as a target to be in line with what is happening around the world, easily over a third, perhaps 40, 45%, as much as that.
Okay, okay. Japan specifically?
I like to be aggressive, so 50% in 5 years.
50%. We'll come back in 5 years to see whether his predictions have come true. Macau?
Well, first of all, sorry for my voice. I have not been partying yesterday, but...
He said he went singing last night, that's why he lost his voice.
Anyhow, Macau went to look for the low-cost airlines in 2004. And the top management of our airport was smart enough to try to look into what happened in Europe, what happened in the United States, and understand what the airlines wanted, low-cost airlines wanted from an airport that was different from what was being provided at the time. We were also very lucky that with that knowledge we could attract AirAsia first and Tiger immediately after, and they started operations in 2004, and today AirAsia is our second most important airline here after Macau, and low-cost airlines represent 30% of our traffic. We believe this structure will probably not change that much. We think there is, because of the characteristics of Macau, there is the need to have low-cost operation for mass traffic volume development, but there is also the need and the space for legacy airlines and business aviation. So we believe all the traffic will be growing, and low-cost airlines will keep growing their share eventually more than proportionally, but we don't think that there will be 50%.
Okay, right. So you're saying that if all the conditions were correct, low-cost airlines would definitely surge. Brendon, I'll come to you in a while, but let me go to David. I believe that in 2005, you applied for a permit to fly here and you were turned back, right?
Yeah.
How did you feel about that rejection?
Well, I mean, in a way, I mean, and with credit to the airport's very open to other carriers coming in from other markets. And I agree, this market will not hit the 40 or 50% level, though, if it really doesn't open up properly. Virgin Group applied for a license, AirAsia applied for a license, another 2 or 3 different applications went in over a course of 4 years, and each time they were pushed back through various steps in the bureaucracy, which is really a tragedy for Macau. I mean, it was probably good to protect a few people and protect Air Macau at the time, but then the question is, what's more important, the economy of the whole SAR, or is it the economy of one particular company who's still struggling? We didn't ask to fly to Beijing against Air Macau. We saw that Air Macau had lots of unused rights on the shelf that no one was touching, going to secondary cities in China. We said, we'll fly those routes. The ones you don't want, we'll take your leftovers. Because in Europe, there's a policy, it's sort of, when it comes to slots and rights, it's a use it or lose it policy. But that didn't apply here, which was, it was unfortunate for Virgin Group at the time. I can't speak for where they are today, but it was more unfortunate, I think, for the hotel owners, because now Singapore's got the march. I mean, Singapore moved ahead while Macau held itself back, and in a way, you could have had that opportunity.
Okay, so I will continue the discussion on airports, but I'll go to Brendon next, okay? I think last week at a hotel conference, I heard that, for example, they say of the 1,871 hotels that are opening in Asia in the next 3 to 5 years, luxury accounts for 25%, and upper scale about 27%, but mid-economy was just 19%. So it seemed that there was this disconnect between what was happening in airlines, which CAPA has said that low cost will account for 50% of all seats in 10 years, and then you've got this luxury sector that's developing, right? So how is this low cost growth benefiting a resort like yours, which is so super luxurious?
Well, foremost, as the world's largest operator of integrated resorts, we our chairman has the vision, we build it, they do come. So if you think about where we actually sit today, this is only 5 years old. 7 years ago, this whole area didn't even exist. And we go back to 2004, the low cost with Macau. So in a short period of 5 years, we've actually created a footprint of 12,000 rooms that have been built in 5 years. If we go forward to 2016, 2017, in that 2-year period, there will be a further 15,000 rooms actually open up here in Macau. That is equivalent to most other cities of 45 hotels opening in an 18 to 24-month period. So if you look at the growth potential, some corporations are forward planning in regards to the establishment of what accessibility and low-cost carriers will actually bring. And as you pointed out, others are a little bit sleepy. But it takes a destination to actually drive the sustainability with the low-cost carrier, working in unison, both with airline, with hotel operations, and also with government policy.
What percentage of occupancies do you think is driven by low-cost airlines to your hotels?
For us, it's probably about 25%, predominantly based on the traffic from Singapore, Malaysia, and Thailand that's coming through today. That is of non-gaming business.
Non-gaming, okay.
One thing to be careful of, and I know there's a lot of talk, and it's true, there are people who've never flown before who couldn't afford to fly. But low-cost carriers also carry a large portion of people who actually could afford to fly. They fly more often because they're competing with people's discretionary income. I can buy an iPad, or I can go to Macau for the weekend. So the people, not a lot of the customers are the same customers as the big airlines. They just travel a lot more often. They can take that opportunity to go away. So, and for 1 hour, 2 hour flight, they can't be bothered about having all the amenities. But when they come to Macau, a lot of them who are traveling cheap, and you'll see them at check-in desk with the tags in their bags, will still be staying in property like this.
Yeah, and so at the discussion last week, I think we asked a luxury brand why they wouldn't work with the low cost, and they said there was a misalignment of brand values. So Zaman, do you find that a major frustration when you speak with people that they say, oh, I don't want to work with AirAsia because we are low cost and it impacts our branding if we work with you? Do you find that?
Okay, just to check who is actually from those brands in this room here.
I think nobody, so it's safe to speak.
To make sure that I don't offend anybody. 10 years since this airline has started, LCCs are now a lot more trusted. I guess it would have been harder 5 years ago for AirAsia to come to a brand hotel and say, hey, I'm going to bring in 1,000 guests per week. And you'll probably laugh me off and say, show me the exit door. Things have changed so much since. And to give credit to what David said as well, AirAsia's passengers today, I'd say easily 20% of them are people who can afford to fly full service carriers. They are actually business travelers during the week, and they're leisure travelers at the weekend. So for that reason, now that all the other elements of tourism, of airports realize that, that is our new card to say, hey, LCC players are serious, we can grow together, and it's opened a lot more doors. So that's probably the reason why I'm invited on this panel as well, right? Because LCCs are recognized. So something has changed. So
it's easier now to get appointments with the luxury brands now, is it? Now that you've proven yourself, okay.
We can meet after this, it's all right.
So, given the new customers, so let's go to Japan then, because Japan is the second largest travel market. I think people forget that because we are also in love with China and India right now. And LCC has the ability to transform the market, right? And in the earlier morning panel, I think Professor Hoon said that the old thinking that Japanese travelers want service and therefore low cost won't work. You think that goes out of the window? You think that this is going to really change the Japanese travel market in terms of customer behavior?
I think so. It's this is golden opportunity. First of all, just don't forget that Japan has $340 billion market for travel, right? The world's second largest market, and China's actually catching up, but still, this side is humongous. And now it is a point where it's going to be turning around, right? So we've been suffering for last 2 decades. The population has been decreasing, the market has been decreasing, but finally, we see some kind of light after a long tunnel kind of thing. So, and in a way, you're right. It's definitely changing, the people's behavior. For example, the great example about the Japanese, people is, like college students, they've been like victimized by the gaming companies, like a Jenga maybe, greed, DNAs, So those young guys just spend so much amount of money on playing the mobile games, right? So, I mean, I had a lot of chance to talk with them, and I say, so do you like to travel? And then they, probably 80% of people, you know, the young students say, no, I don't travel. So, but this is actually a great impact for them, you know, to start. Even like there's some gaming company actually has the location-based mobile gaming, which actually stimulate the demand for traveling. So, and then we have a great infrastructure for internet and mobile internet too. So that actually going to drive the you know, growth. Maybe, you know, I mean, I was actually telling like 50% in 5 years, right? You know, I was not joking, because you know that whole infrastructure is there. So that is totally different from other countries.
Okay, so we are going to see, thank goodness, young Japanese put aside their video games and come on board and travel. That's great news, number one.
Yeah.
So one of the things I think that low-cost airlines have done really successfully is move the customer online, right? I mean, AirAsia, you said everybody can fly, but also everybody can book online, right?
That's right.
So how do you see this low-cost revolution in North Asia changing customer behavior trends? What trends are you seeing in search? Case company runs Japan's largest travel search site, which is like the, should I call you the kayak of Japan, right? And so how has customer behavior changed on search since LCC?
Okay, so this Hoon actually touched upon a little bit. So I just got the data from Google Japan about 2 weeks ago. So their data shows in the month of June, 49% of search queries to Google Japan's from mobile. So this is shocking number, right? For travel search, you know. And we actually see more than 30% of traffic are coming from mobile. And our revenue is actually coming from our mobile, probably 25% now. So it's really a shocking number. And so the reason behind here is, just remember, 3G penetrations in Japan is already 95%. So, for example, I'm actually running, I'm a runner. So I always put the internet radio on when I go out for a run. So this cannot be done in any other city, even in Singapore or Hong Kong or so.
Not yet.
Not yet, but it's coming. It is coming.
Okay, so Zaman, let's talk about AirAsia. In Southeast Asia, you revolutionized flying and online travel. I think 90% of your customers come direct to the website?
Now it's 90%. All bookings are done via the internet. Further 3 to 4% over mobile, and the other 7% through normal distribution channels, yes. So something has changed. But I'm going to actually say this as well. Since AirAsia started, it's only been a month so far, so you saw the statistics just now, about 55,000 people have flown. 40% of them are 60 years old and above. That's an amazing number. So we were surprised by the demographics of the passengers who've actually booked. A large number of them are actually probably the retiring passengers. And I personally was at Narita at the day of the start, on the day that we started. And I got to see the passengers, and most of them were retired, well, semi-retired, going to be retiring, and they were flying to Hokkaido. Mm-hmm. They're going off to Okinawa to just have a break. So, tied in with what you said about internet booking, does that mean that the Japanese elderly population is also very internet savvy and they can do those bookings?
This is a really good point, because no one actually figured out, for example, our website's users demographic. It's probably over 50 years old. That accounts probably 30% of our users.
Right.
So, surprisingly, there's so many senior people actually coming to our website to find great deals. And then they use the internet. So that is actually totally beyond my expectation when I started this business, let's say 5-10 years ago.
So this speaks directly to Peter's heart, because he always talks about the silver market, and don't forget us baby boomers. We have the money and we have the time to travel. David, let's talk about therefore what you see in the trends in Australia since in online penetration by low-cost airlines.
Well, we started the airline in 99 we launched the plan, and in 2000 we actually started flying. And at the time, it was about 3% online in Australia. We got up to 50% about 3 years. It went up into the 70s, 80s. So on some airlines in other parts of the world can achieve 90 plus, 95. And Ryanair basically makes 100%. There is a question whether there's a certain market, because my mom, who's not as probably internet savvy as obviously a lot of these moms in Japan, grandmas in Japan, probably won't book online. So there is a question whether you really want to go to 100% online level or not. It varies from market to market, situation to situation. Whether you pay, we were discussing yesterday in this, we had a discussion whether you pay extra to go through other channels to recover that cost. But it's certainly possible to hit 75, 80, 85%. That would be a normal target operation. You might get 90 or 95, depends on your strategy.
Okay, so we're talking about a slew of new customers, who are coming on board, travel with low cost and the internet. I mean, let's talk to Brendon then. I mean, I know hotels have always been, looking to get back the control of inventory and pricing from the OTAs, right? And so how have you been doing it here?
We try to work on rate parity as well as price guarantees across the hotels. The challenge we actually face is hotels are still very reliant on traditional distribution methods, agencies, wholesale tour operators, etc. And so one of the ways we've been able to drive our own brand performance sites versus that of OTAs is to provide that rate guarantee, because hotels have normally been that bundled option with air, with other forms of transportation. So we struggle really to get beyond 15 to 18% in regards to direct distribution online. But as low-cost carriers continue to drive that direct distribution, then that changes the behaviours in regards to hotel, that they become less reliant on traditional distribution models.
Okay, so let's go to the airports then. So we've covered the new traveller, he's booking online, he's flying with a low cost, he's staying in a hotel like yours, and then now he comes to the airport. So how are airports reinventing themselves to, please these new travellers that are, always on?
Basically, we are providing an infrastructure for the airlines to operate, bringing their business in the model that they want. The big change for low-cost airlines is to find ways, not only for the airport, but also for all the airport business environment, to provide choice. The airline should be able to choose the services that they want to have and pay only for those services. No package handling, no package fees. Every service should have value and a price. And we want all the airlines to be profitable, and we want the airports to be able to also be profitable enough to finance their own development as needed. And the problem we have in Macau is that we don't have airlines enough, or at least we don't have routes enough. I was listening to Brendon saying that he receives 25% of bookings from low cost. But in fact, what we have arriving at the airport is only around 7% of the people that is coming to visit Macau.
7%. 7%.
So this means that a lot of people arriving in Macau do not have the option or the possibility of arriving at the airport. Lack of flights, lack of connections, inconvenience of prices, whatever. Another point that was raised was related with constraints in terms of operation. We want the airport and the Macau aviation industry to be as open as possible, because we believe that's what better serves Macau and that's what better serves the airport. However, we also know that airlines that somehow bond themselves with the place and the destination are those that are based in that territory, based in the airport. So we would love to have accepted Virgin Blue as an airline based in Macau, or AirAsia in a partnership also based in Macau, or Viva that we had and unfortunately disappears, because first they will offer no alternatives for people to arrive, and we are mainly an inbound market. We are not, we have a small population, and we would be able to better serve our purpose to finance, to help the economy of Macau. In any case, another principle that was stated by the boss of Brendon is we build it, they will come. And that's a fact. We are going to receive this year 30 million people visiting Macau, and they will come from wherever place they can come. To the border of the land, by jet fare from Hong Kong, wherever. We just think that it will be much more convenient for them.
Okay. So just build it and they will come. Let's flip the question around then and ask the airlines. You know, so Zaman and you know, what do you want from airports? I mean, I know that AirAsia has had phenomenal headaches with airports in Malaysia, and is that the reason for your move to Jakarta, because you're fed up of Malaysia? I mean, what's with the move?
Ouch! That's a very big question. So just for the record, AirAsia moving to Jakarta is literally just all the group functions, Tony and all the group heads, including myself. We are now going to be running the group from Jakarta. So we're forming an entity called AirAsia ASEAN, and it's just meant as a holding office to make sure that we can run Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, Philippines, Japan as separate units. So the first thing we had to dispel to the Malaysian government was, why are you moving away from Malaysia? You hate us so much. So that's not the case. My comment, and being just looking at how large the pie is, notice this. The earlier graph showed airport growth over the last 5 years has mainly come from the growth of LCCs. So first of all, the statement of cannibalizing the traditional full-service carrier markets is not true, right? LCCs has created new markets, and thus you're going to see new travelers coming into airports as such. The second big thing we've always been telling airports, Malaysia airports in general, anybody from Malaysia airports here? Okay, I can see what I want then. No, in general.
You can speak your mind.
No, in general, what it is, when it comes to LCCs now approaching airports, we just tell them two things. One, there's a much larger pie now for you to grab, right? So when it comes to passenger service charges, PSCs, make sure a larger pie means more revenue. And we're really trying to tell the airports, aeronautical charges is the old way of getting revenue from airports. Don't think about parking fees, don't think about traditional security fees. It's more important to actually think about the customer coming to the airport, hanging out there for 3 hours. How can we milk their wallets a lot more, right? So we're talking about non-aeronautical revenue, such as commercial shops and any ancillary income that we both can benefit on.
So don't charge the airlines, charge the customers. Is that what you're saying?
No. Passenger service charges are still there, and passenger service charges are still there for the airport to provide the infrastructure for the low-cost passenger, i.e. build low-cost terminals, build nice low-cost terminals where it's almost at par, because that's only fair for the passenger. Get more non-aeronautical revenue from the passenger hanging on the airport, and both win. It's a much larger pie to grab.
Okay, and David, what would be your formula for the airport of the 21st century?
The airline industry is recognized. It took a few years, but the airline industry is now recognized that it's not a one-size-fits-all product. Most, although some big flag carriers haven't really realized that they can't serve every single passenger segment effectively. And so if the airlines have finally figured this out, then the airports need to figure this out too. And some airports are better than others in that sense. Some have really grasped this, they've built different terminal facilities, they've made different offerings. And if you are an LCC, which allows you to disaggregate the product, you can sell hotels for those who want hotels. You can sell airport parking, and so which everyone wins, everyone makes money out of the ancillary revenue, which under a traditional GDS type system, traditional travel distribution through a travel agency, that revenue stream didn't occur. So most of the LCCs are on newer systems like Navitaire and there's other different systems, and they're out there selling a lot of other revenues, which can benefit airports. Sharp airports are now opening lounges on a pay-per-use basis, or
So
they sell parking.
which airports have been really good at doing this? Can you name three, the top three?
Sure. I mean, certainly Kuala Lumpur, despite the fact that there's been issues over time and a little tension between AirAsia and Kuala Lumpur, the reality is they've built an amazing facility. Now, it hasn't been able to keep up with the even more amazing growth of AirAsia, but it's still an amazing facility. Singapore did it, now they've knocked it down, nobody's quite sure what's happening. Gold Coast built an excellent facility, very focused on low-cost carriers, and there's examples of this in other parts of the world as well. So there's clearly models out there for the airports who want to engage with this market while still serving their primary customers well. I mean, Singapore is still one of the best airports in the world, and they've got one of the best airlines in the world in Singapore Airlines, but they've built the budget terminal, and hopefully they'll rebuild something bigger to serve that market as well. So
Zaman, how has your experience been with the Japanese airports since you flew in? Because I think there was a stat that Peter said 95% of Japanese airports were unprofitable. How have your experience been?
Nightmare.
Nightmare? Okay. That's
It's been a
good to know.
nightmare. It's been a nightmare mainly because, you're right, I mean, LCCs are new in Japan. You're talking about, going to Narita, you're talking about going to Fukuoka, airports which are traditionally very much full-service carrier. It's been a nightmare in the sense that, hey, the low-cost carrier model brings this kind of passenger profile. They actually like to come in with a lot of luggage. They like to actually have a bit more spending power in their pockets. Why don't we work on this and try to make a bigger pie? Everybody gets happy. Mind my opinion as it might be, but it's just very traditional thinking. And to be fair, when it comes to the airport authorities in Japan, it's probably driven by probably two schools of thought. There is a school of thought driven saying, yes, the younger Japanese demographic can travel, and this is what they want. But the ones who are making decisions are based on the more traditional travelers. So it's been a nightmare, but we'll get through it.
Okay, so let's continue the discussion on new customers, and I'll come to the audience for questions later. New customers, and I'm not bringing this up because I'm a woman, okay? Sorry, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I just would like to say something about the low-cost terminals. In fact, this is a concept that was introduced in Asia. It was in the States and in Europe that didn't happen. And in Asia, from our talks in several events like this one in Singapore and Malaysia, it is considered now as a mistake. And Malaysia, in fact, is the new so-called terminal that replaces the low-cost is a tunnel terminal, very close to the old terminal. And Singapore is considering to end the terminal. The reason is that the passengers, in fact, buy cheaper tickets to fly in a low-cost airline. They don't expect to have low service at the airport, first reason. Second reason is for the airports, making a new terminal means if you still have capacity in the existing terminal, you are spending more money, as little as it is. Despite that, you are duplicating, checking, immigration, police systems, and so on. So, in terms of the cost for operation for the airport, the low-cost terminal frequently is an increase of costs, not a decrease of costs. So
you're saying dedicated low-cost terminals?
What I'm saying is we airports need to understand, and we are trying to understand how to handle the different needs of the low costs. But we also need the low-cost airlines to understand the needs of the airports. For instance, the fact that there is no seat allocation in a lot of cases. The main argument of the low cost that we can make more money from the shops doesn't happen because people are so afraid to get the best seat that they will queue half an hour before and they will not go anywhere to shop anything.
Okay, so this is a debate in itself, Peter. This is a debate in itself. Do you have a one-line answer to that?
In AirAsia, we now practice pick a seat, and I'm sure a lot of the LCCs do that as well, so that will be the one-line answer.
There's airports. The process is for a learning experience, and there's airports who've solved that problem. Copenhagen built a low-cost terminal that goes to this common security point, common retail section. There's always going to be a bit of tension between airports and airlines. Airlines will always tell you that airports are monopolists, squeezing the public and squeezing the airlines, but they have to work together. It's not always, it's a bit of an arranged marriage, but it has to work together. There's always a bit of tension.
It's a marriage of inconvenience, and you want to turn it into a marriage of convenience, right? Okay, so I want to move to my next question, which is about new customers that are coming. I think Peter touched on that, you know, what these low-cost airlines have done is also sparked a lot of shopping to us, right? And we know that women are the ones who shop, right? And now we have Zaman was talking about how airports should charge the customer and get them to buy when they're at the airport. So can I ask you, women travelers, right? We know they influence 75% of leisure travel decisions. So what are each of you doing to capture that women's share of the market?
Are you sure it's not 100%?
Maybe in your case. Who wants to go for it first?
Well, from our side is we build integrated resorts that cater to all segmentation, both from a gaming, family, and also from a female side. You know, here we have 600 duty-free stores, and our target audience is actually female traveller in regards to the shopping component, whilst the male traveller predominantly will gamble or do other entertainment activities. So, you know, for us, it's trying to get a marriage with the activities of a male traveller with that of a female traveller, but also trying to create a group movement as well, and females do travel in hordes for shopping.
Okay, so AirAsia.
For us, I'll give an example of Bandung, Indonesia. Bandung, Indonesia was a route which was never developed up to 4 years ago. AirAsia started flying there. And there was a great attraction in Bandung, and that is lots of clothes. A lot of the factory outlets there are producing clothes for Europe, and the off-take of those are actually sold in little shops in Bandung. So the normal Indonesian will go to Bandung for a day and shop like nuts. The result is we started the route, and now we're there for quite a few times a day. So knowing where the customer wants to go, give them a bit of an incentive, and they'll come. So yes, we are adapting, and that's why we have to speak to women a lot.
Okay, so I mean, you know, it is known that the way women shop is different from the way men shop, right? And the same is true of online behavior. So how they shop online is very different, right? Okay, and what percentage of your website visitors are women?
Roughly 51%.
51%, okay. And have you found any sort of behavioral insights, you know, where people wanting to target women travelers, do they sort of look for more reviews? Are they more social versus the men who may just go, I want this pair of jeans and that's it?
Well, that's actually a good point. So definitely, you know, in terms of choosing hotels, they tended to read our reviews more. And also social is a very important component right now. And what we're trying to do right now is we are actually hiring more sort of like freelance writers, and then they're typically women who love like, let's say, spas or the shopping, and they onsens, we try to make a contract with, let's say, like 20 or 30 women writers or so, and then ask them to write a blog at the same time, so they'll be in charge of our Facebook, Twitters, and then try to influence the the women travelers to come to our website. Then typically our users actually come to our website to search for the lowest airfares, but women actually have a different hook. So we try to capture those demands by doing such activities.
Okay, so different content to inspire women and to entice them to shop. Okay, do we have any questions from the audience? We have 10 minutes to go. I'm sure there must be lots of questions. No questions? Okay, so can I then ask you just one-word answers to kind of wrap? Okay, what is the biggest speed bump you see in, creating this low-cost transformation of Asia's travel? What is the biggest speed bump that you see ahead?
Governments.
Governments?
Accessibility.
Accessibility?
Fuel in airports.
Pardon?
fuel price.
Fuel and airports. Okay, and I believe you used to work for Petronas.
That's correct.
So is there a way to bring fuel costs down? Can you share that experience from your previous life?
Being in an oil company, whenever you see an oil price, think about speculation, because oil price has gone like this and that even in the last 6 months. So don't believe the oil industry too much.
Okay, that's why you're working for an airline.
That's why now I'm working for an airline.
Okay,
so it's fuel and airports.
Fuel and airports. And Kate?
What general conception of fear, I think, for the people, right? People, they don't really get proper understanding of what local carriers mean. So, we need to get rid of that mentality, I think.
A misunderstanding of the low-cost concept.
Right,
okay.
right.
And António?
I think it's regulation, basically.
Technology?
Regulation. The lack of liberalization from the governments, some traditional protection of the base airlines, and a lot of bilateral agreements still in force. That as long as we don't get rid of that, it will be very difficult to get the real development going on.
Okay. So what is the one thing that is like, keeping you excited about your business and saying, yeah, I'm in the right industry right now? You have to think so hard?
No, I just think I'm trying to put in words in one word. It's a billion people, a billion plus people that are out there that haven't had this opportunity yet.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the market out there, compared to when we came in Australia, that we thought we changed the world. There were 20 million people. I think multiply that times what's just north of here.
Okay, Brendon?
Growth.
Growth?
Growth is certainly the key. We build it, they come.
Do you really believe that, do you?
We do indeed.
Okay, growth, okay.
ASEAN has a population of 600 million people, actually 630 million people last checked. With a propensity of traveling one flight per year, 600 million flights you can sell. And within that LCC market, then there's a lot to be grabbed. So that keeps us excited.
Okay, so growth again, okay. Okay.
Well, essentially the same thing. For Japan, again, $340 billion finally waking up. So, turn around.
Okay.
This is tremendous opportunities.
Right, okay. António? Growth again?
In airports, we are always very happy to be part of the scene because there seems to be a permanent transformation in aviation with more and more people having access to the air transport and the airport being a place that is in permanent change because of that. Now, the low-cost airline.
Language?
I don't think language has to be a barrier. You look at what goes on in Europe and elsewhere, and people are traveling in countries with different languages. It's not. Most people will get out there and see the world and do things. I don't think language.
Yeah, we have Google Translate.
I don't see the barrier. Sorry.
Okay, so what do you see as a barrier, other than governments?
Other than governments, I honestly believe if you just let the market take its course. I mean, I'd probably, sound really libertarian about it, but just let the market take its course. The bilaterals, the whole treaties around aviation were discussed. Those things those are dinosaurs. They just need to be, people who decide that airlines are public services. They're a business, and as long as airlines can be run like a business without, not be interfered with more than any other business, they'll get on with it.
Okay.
I think there's one embedded risk there is a media. Right. For example, if some accident happened in the local carriers, all the media actually bash, right? So that is actually, it is a big risk. I mean, especially in Japan, if something happens, all the media actually just come there and they bash, right? That is actually a very huge risk, I see.
So an unforeseen crisis.
Right.
Okay. All right.
Can I add on to that?
Sure.
Social media today with Twitter, Facebook, and if you make your company or airline or even a hotel very accessible, 100 compliments is great. One complaint and the whole world reads about it. So you've got to be very quick to react to say hey, this is this is just a view of one person as such. So it really keeps us on our toes in the service industry. So that's revolutionized.
So on that tone, I was talking to hoteliers, and they say usually they try and look after the women travelers during in their resorts, because if you please the wife, you have a happy life, and the wife will always write good reviews. So women apparently tend to write more reviews, So look after the women, and you will get lots of compliments. Okay, so to wrap up, this morning we heard a prediction that I think it was like it's going to be in 10 years' time we're going to have 5 to 6 mega LCCs, right? We heard that prediction this morning. So there are 5 of you here. Can you predict one of those mega LCCs that will be there in 5 years' time?
Well, let's go to March. I think AirAsia will be
AirAsia?
one of them.
I'd say AirAsia.
AirAsia? That's 2, okay.
I obviously can't say AirAsia.
Well, Zaman, other than AirAsia, who do you look to and say, wow, they're doing something good? They're doing good.
I'd really try to watch out for Lion Air.
Lion Air, okay. All right.
We have 10 low-cost airlines operating. We believe AirAsia is...
AirAsia?
No, I believe today AirAsia is the best and is the biggest. I'm afraid that maybe in 5 years' time, we will have a Chinese that might be bigger.
Okay, so a Chinese one, can you name, or do you think it's in existence today?
Experience Spring has been growing very fast, but I don't know, because this is a business transformation in China.
Okay.
I want to make a slightly different comment on this. I'm sure Asia, Jetstar, Peach, they're all doing well, I think. But at the same time, from Japanese perspective, don't forget the Skymark. Skymark Airlines has been around for quite a while. They've been successful. They haven't been out there to market themselves, but they're actually one of the first, low-cost carriers in Asia, and they're doing well.
I agree with that.
Good. Well, on that note, I think we are just out of time. Join me in thanking the panelists, David, Brendon, Zaman, Kay, and António. Thank you very much.